are once again. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but in some of our pods, some were like really high in volume, some were really low in volume. So we've been having to maneuver around, figuring out how to do this, even though we are on episode what?
I think 15? It's like 15, yeah.
Yeah, so that just shows it's a constant journey.
Well, we're just learning all the time. I actually noticed it when we were talking about like finances and accounting this week. You know, we're just always learning. We're always doing new things. Like I'm literally adjusting the mic as I'm talking. Like it's just going to happen and it's fine. If there's anything that we talk about, it's navigating this with like reality and realness.
Yeah.
I think I turned my light off. Oh, there we go.
Oh,
okay,
there it is.
We're good.
Yay!
See, again, and it's one of those where like, those are the things that I want to see and hear because at this point, there's enough like picture perfect people out there.
Yeah. So we just want to be authentically unperfect, but also doing pretty dang good.
Yeah, for sure.
But hi guys, welcome back to Couch Combos.
Welcome.
Where we debunk some things and also just bring realness to the therapeutic experience and us in a room.
I'm really excited for this session. I just said session. This episode's topic today.
Best topic ever.
Attachment
styles. And we were just chatting how this is like our favorite. When we started talking about this in school, notes came out. I was ready. I was pumped.
All the different colored pens.
All the little sticky notes, all the things. Because it's just so relevant.
Yes.
I think for me personally, but I see it so much when my clients, it shows up in the room.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And it's one of those where like I feel like you can't uncheck that box. Because you will always be thinking about your attachment to other people. Yeah. Unless you're truly solitary and you've never attached to anyone in your life, which there are diagnostics for that too.
Very true.
I just think that like attachment can apply to everyone and can benefit everyone just by learning about it. So it was funny when this was another one of the topics that we posted on our Instagram. Yeah. Soul Haven Counseling or at Couch Combos Pod. Go give us a follow. But this was one of those that got a lot of votes. And like, I think I titled like the attachment theory, like ruined and then saved my life. And a lot of people actually reached out to me personally too. And they were like, I really want to hear about attachments because I feel like mine are bad. Yeah. I'm like, it's all a myth, but like, we'll definitely talk about it.
Right. For sure. And with attachment, there's always like a moment where you're like, or an aha moment. So what was your like cringe or aha moment from early attachment?
From early attachment. Ooh. I feel like as a kid, oh yeah, here we go. As a kid, you know, in like Disney Channel movies where there was like usually one parent who was deceased. Yes. I literally, again, I should have known at that point I was going to become a therapist. I felt so deeply for those family dynamics. I was terrified that was going to happen. And like my dad traveled a lot for work when I was a kid. I was always like, is he going to come back? Is he okay? And like I slept walk a lot as a kid and I had night terrors. Yeah. And at one point I like called my dad in my sleep because he was out of town. I don't have a recollection of all of this, but like my attachment was so secure. It turned a little bit more fearful. Thanks, Disney Channel.
God, Bambi and all the things.
Yeah, but it was just funny though because like this is like this is very relevant, but I would like wake up with like chicken wings under my pillow at one point.
Chicken wings?
Because of the sleepwalking. But then other days, like my attachment style was showing, and I'd like try to call my dad and see if he was okay. So it was just one of those where I was like, oh, these movies are planting a seed that I don't really like.
That's wild. I would love to do research on sleepwalking because I too was a sleepwalker and a night terrors. Mine was worms. There was worms coming out of the ceiling and I would see people. And then I think one time I would have spoons. Mine was a spoon. I would go to the kitchen, grab a spoon and come back. Or at one point I guess I was trying to exit the home because I got into the garage and I sat on the step and I just started crying in the middle of the night and my parents
I actually did that too. My parents like armed their security system not to keep other people out but to keep me in.
Yeah, thankfully I was too short to be able to reach how to like push the garage door button. I know, for once. It's a wild time, but
that's wild that we both slept well.
I know.
I also kind of love that like I grabbed food and you grabbed utensils.
I got a spoon and you got chicken wings.
Together we can have one real meal. Yeah. But what was your like attachment Delulu like ooh moment?
Oh, bro. So I'm about to really call myself out. I hope my people hear this and they're like, that tracks, and don't just completely judge me for this. So I think it was John Benet Ramsey. It was the
Yeah.
time of John Benet Ramsey.
Sure.
And I don't know where I heard the story.
Sure.
But I heard it of someone coming through a window, grabbing a child and leaving, all those things. And I instantly was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get kidnapped. I have to spend all of my time by my parents so that I can stay safe. So I became very anxiously attached very early. And I slept in my parents' bedroom until let's just say an abnormally late age. And when I say abnormally, I mean abnormally.
Sure, you were afraid.
Yes, I was very scared. I believe I didn't leave my parents' bedroom until I was like 10 or 11.
Yeah, you were terrified.
I was terrified.
Man, okay, so we were both like heavily influenced by the media in terms of our attachment.
Yes. Yeah.
Huh.
Interesting.
Okay, if you are thinking about like your early childhood like attachment aha moments, is any of it media related? Let us know. Again, Spotify has comments still.
Yeah, let us know in the comments.
Let us know in the comments. Or if it's just like, I don't know, a book you read or something that you saw online, a podcast, or depending on your age, podcast may not have been a thing.
Yeah.
But definitely let us know what those like early childhood attachment moments were for you. Because interesting that both of us were like media related.
Also, that just stresses me out for the kids these days. All the aspects of media that they have like their hands on. Because I'm thinking, what did we have? We had TV and the radio.
And tabloids. Like I remember like
and magazines.
The Inquirer magazine, which was like, ooh, Bruce Willis has a purple foot. Like none of it was ever real.
Yeah.
I hope Bruce Willis is doing okay. He's got a lot of health
and
complications. But yeah, with stuff like that. But I'm thinking about like, you're right. Now, all of the true crime podcasts I listen to, little child me, who the Disney Channel original movies terrified.
Oh yeah.
She would have had no chance.
I would have never have left my parents' bedroom. But so as we're moving into attachment starts at childhood, and this brings up Sarah's phenomenal work that she does with the inner child and internal phase.
I was like, what are you
and IFS of like child work, and we actually mentioned that we're gonna plug our episode from the quarter life quake 20s and 30s timeline, all of those things. So if you haven't listened to that one, go ahead and pop back in or give it a re-listen. It's a good one. Leave a comment on
it's
it.
Like a good like sibling of this episode.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But I will say that like that inner child work that we mentioned then is so relevant now, because a lot of those like inner child concepts are born out of early childhood attachment. Yeah. And there's also so many like biological and physiological components of attachment styles too. Because even things like prenatal and perinatal trauma, they have huge impacts on attachment. But that's just kind of like my own nerdy science tangent that I could always go down. But basically like how we want to talk about attachment in this episode is to really just shed light. Because I think attachment is one of those where like I remember like thinking about this episode, realizing like, ooh, this might cause some like feelings of shame for potentially some people. And we don't want to do that. And of course, if it's something's like someone's reaction, that's fine. But I think it's more so to provide insight and awareness. And just kind of say like, hey, like there's nothing wrong with any certain attachment style. A secure attachment style isn't a gold standard. It's not perfect. Instead, it's to acknowledge like, okay, this is where I'm at and this is where I want to go.
Yeah. It is not like if you have anything other than a secure attachment that you are just like doomed with all relationships. Because I'll call myself out. I still have an anxious attachment that I'm managing and working through. And I'm a dang therapist. And, you know, have tons of relationships. And it's just constantly being aware. It's just like awareness.
Absolutely. So, okay, if we're going to break down all of the attachment styles. Well, first of all, I think that people don't realize that like your attachment style can change.
Yes.
Very well.
From day to day.
Yeah. And with different people. Like one of my favorite things to do with clients when I first start working with them, especially on attachment-based trauma, is there's an assessment I run where it gives you a different assessment for a maternal figure, a paternal figure, and then a romantic figure. So you get like mom side, dad side, partner side. Yeah. And you could have different attachment styles with all of them. Yeah. And I love that because again, labels, I just don't love them as a whole. But I think like stratifying them in a different way, I really enjoy that because I would argue that most folks don't have the same attachment style with both of their parental figures if they do have two in the home.
Totally. It's interesting. I actually took that test. And here's the thing. If you Google attachment style quiz, you're going to have hundreds pop up. But there's actually, and I learned this like maybe a year ago, there's actually only one that is like validated as,
Okay.
this
Yeah.
is the end all be
Real.
all attachment style quiz.
that.
So I will try it. I'm going to link that
Sure.
in the bio. So
Yeah.
if you want to take it, it's like it's pretty hefty. There's at least 100 questions on it, but it does the spectrum
I love
thing,
that.
and it brings in personality. So
Ooh, I do like that a lot. And I do think that, like, okay. And I was trying to think of a good way for us to frame this. Attachment styles that we will go into will impact parents a lot. But it's one of those where, like, I don't know how you feel about it. This is one of those dynamics where I feel like I can't, like, specifically speak on it because I'm not a parent. I have children in my life.
Right.
And it's one of those where if you are a parent and you want to come on and, like, have those discussions with us as a guest, like, please do let us know. But when we're talking about attachment styles, we want to give space to knowing that there is a whole different dynamic that can happen with your child. There's transference, there's countertransference, and there's a lot more nuance to it. So maybe that can just be a separate episode in its own with maybe some special guests that come in.
for sure. Ooh, our first guest.
Yes.
Whoa, we're
I
really
just-
really bringing it.
I don't
in
know. It
now.
just didn't feel right to talk about parenting and attachment style, honestly.
Yeah. It's tough because, like, of course, we work a lot with parents,
Yeah.
and we've learned a lot through books, but we don't have that experience, our own personal.
Yes, because and we could
hang out with it.
we could talk all day about how it could impact parenting, but I think there would just be something really special about having someone with that lived experience with this one,
for sure.
just to pay respect.
Yeah,
Parents are
to you guys.
doing the Lord's work here.
Okay, so starting off,
Yes.
secure attachment.
Wow.
So secure attachment essentially means you're comfortable with closeness and independence. So the ability to have those emotional connections with others while also being able to say, like, okay, by myself, I'm okay. And there's a lot of, like, trust with that of if you leave, you're going to come back. I don't have to be 100% concerned. What is the video with the babies? And when their parents like come and leave and testing attachments and all of that. So that's secure of, like, feeling as if, okay, I know that this person in my life, I can trust that they are with me, and that if they go somewhere, if they leave, or if they're not talking to me, doesn't mean that they hate me.
It's
it just
fine.
means that they're busy or they're doing something else.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then there's anxious.
Yeah.
There's anxious, and it's like craving closeness, but also like really fearing abandonment. So it's one of those where it's like, ooh, if this person didn't text me back, like, are they mad at me? Or am I texting them too much? Or what's my text saying? Or how long do I wait to text them? And it's just that, like, I want to be close to somebody, but I'm afraid that it won't be reciprocated, or they're just going to leave. And this is just like a fleeting shooting star kind of relationship.
It's always looking for the underlying subtext
Yep.
of what's not being said, that's potentially not even being thought, but you think it's being thought.
When we
Talk about
like,
intrusive
I was
thoughts.
saying, when we talk about cognitive distortions, this is a lot of like the fortune teller kind of
Yes, for sure.
deal.
Okay, and then avoidant. So this is like suppressing those attachment needs.
Yeah.
So pushing away, building those walls up, kind of like avoiding intimacy, avoiding that. And it feels safe of, okay, well, if I don't get too close, then I can't be hurt. So it's kind of that, like, at arm's length.
Yep.
So secure is, hey, we can come in, we will welcome you, but also let you be free. Whereas anxious is, stay close to me all the time. It's like one of the tight hugs that you get from your grandma of, like, or I'm going to plug Disney, or at Disney, how they don't let go until you let go.
That's precious.
So thoughtful and intentional, Disney. Thank you for this.
I started doing that with my nephew.
Yes, it's such a good thing because you don't know what they need.
No, you don't.
Okay, but then avoidant is like, don't come give me a hug.
No. And just like, also there's a little bit of fear in that one too, of like, ooh, what's going to happen and things like that. Then there's also disorganized, which is really just a combination of that anxious and avoidant kind of style. It's like, ooh, like, no, come close to me, be close to me, but also like, go away. And it's a lot of that like mental game of, I don't know where we stand. I don't know if I want people close to me, but I also do. That's a hard one. It's definitely just like a combination type for sure.
For sure. Okay, so I saw this stat and I was like, really?
I would like to see it redone now.
Yes.
And with different age ranges.
Yes. And with, especially with COVID, after COVID.
Yeah.
But the stat says that 50 to 60% of people are in a secure attachment style.
I think that's baloney.
I think that's baloney as well.
Yeah.
No. Because you think about it, one, they're not always insecure. And
Correct.
Not insecure, but in space, secure attachment.
Yeah.
Of like, I'm sure they got to be like buffering somewhere in there. And 50 to 60%, that's half and over half.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah, that would be a lot of people.
And we work with a lot of people too.
Yeah.
I at least don't see that in my caseload and in my personal life. I don't see that either.
Right. But that is the stat. But once again, to reiterate, if you are listening and you're like, I don't think that I have a secure attachment style, that is okay. Yeah. Like, that is okay. It is not the gold star standard.
Yeah,
it is honestly pretty difficult to achieve sometimes, but it is manageable. But you're gonna go in and out.
Oh, for sure.
Always.
And I saw this really cool thing, and I know that like we're not going to like talk about parenting applications, but I liked this, and it was a theory. It was like Tronic's 30% attachment theory.
Yeah. Because
I know that the parents in my life have talked about like the parent guilt, the parent shame, and just wanting to make sure their child has a secure attachment style.
Right.
Tronic's research says that if you are making secure attachment based decisions 30% of the time, that your child will likely have a secure attachment style.
Yeah.
So keep in mind, so if any parents are hearing this, that this theory that is like evidence based is saying that if you make these quote unquote good decisions as a parent 30% of the time, not 70, not 80, 30% of the time, that is good enough for a secure attachment style in your child. And I think that like parents can kind of check in with themselves too. And obviously like this theory doesn't have to drive everyone's behaviors, but it could be just like a good check-in system of like, hey, I'm doing better than I thought.
Yeah.
And it's quite literally called the good enough theory of parenting and attachment.
And I love that. I mean, when I think about my own perfectionism tendencies, it's hard to say, okay, well, that was good enough for something. Yeah. And with parenting, with being in a relationship, with your work, all of the things of being able to say, no, that was good enough, because we're humans. We're not going to be perfect. And I think this shows like you don't have to be perfect to have a well-adjusted, loving relationship with your kid. And I know that it also mentioned like attunement. Yeah. That it doesn't mean that there's not going to be ruptures, but instead like when there is a rupture, you're able to come in and say, hey, I'm noticing something's going on.
And I think that also people don't realize that ruptures strengthen a secure attachment too.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of fear of like, ooh, like this attachment is secure. It's feeling good. I can't say anything or rock the boat. Yeah. That's actually counterintuitive. Like having those discussions makes things more secure. Definitely. And it was like I see these like things online all the time where it's like the most uncomfortable conversations make the strongest relationships. And those are always one that I have to check in and be like, ooh, what relationships am I the most comfortable in, and do they feel strong or do they feel surface? Right. And I think that like when we're thinking about connection, that's a great thing to just like keep in mind and make this like base level assessment with yourself of just like, ooh, like where am I at? What are my relationships like? Am I cool with that? Yeah. Things like that.
So your holy poop moment of when you were like, oh my gosh. So sitting in class, we're learning about attachment. What was your moment? You're like, oh my gosh.
I think it was learning that it could change and it could be different based on person. Like that, knowing that it can be stratified based on parents and partner. I have felt so much better. Yeah. Because I was like, that's not right. Because my attachment style changed significantly after grad school because it was pretty secure in grad school, which was kind of interesting to think about. But I remember thinking like my parental attachment is secure, which like, yeah, for sure. It's still very secure. But my partner was not. Yeah. Which I kind of felt like I was doing something wrong. In retrospect, yeah, that makes sense.
The eyes. If you guys are not watching the video,
eyes are, there's a lot. You can't unpack there. And it's actually interesting. I've like sprinkled enough throughout all the podcast episodes. I hope our listeners are like, yeah, girl, that relationship wasn't secure either. And so I think that was like my best, like, okay, that's wild kind of moment. Yeah. What about you?
I think mine was when someone finally said you don't have to have a secure attachment to be able to have healthy relationships.
Oh, I love that.
Because I took that test and I saw the spectrum of where things were, and I was looking, I was like, oh my gosh, what is happening? Yeah. And then we were having this conversation and someone finally said that you do not have to be in the secure level in order for something to be healthy or helpful or positive.
Yeah, it's not the gold standard.
And I was like, okay, because my brain automatically goes to, I have to be secure in all my relationships.
I failed.
What am I doing wrong? Yep. But instead, that moment where someone said, no, you don't have to have that. And also, this is going to change. Sure. And it's going to adapt as you like grow and age and where you are in your personality and your growth. So
your frontal lobe develops too.
That's right. Which apparently they're moving it back past 25.
Really?
They're saying like 27, even like 30. And then I'm thinking, man, I could not even be fully frontal lobe developed.
I definitely I wonder why. Is it because of like environmental factors, all the
I would assume
poison in our
so.
food and in our water, and
Possibly, as well as like the trauma
of
experiences
COVID.
that have been yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's why they're like backing it up, but
Especially our generation too. I mean, I think about like I have memories of 9/11 and then the housing crashing and the recession of the early 2000s, and then obviously COVID.
Yeah, which is very
and
salient.
there was a lot that happened in between. What do they say? It's like unprecedented times. I'm like, why are we
unprecedented
still living in unprecedented times?
Yeah.
I was actually just thinking about, as we were going through all the different attachment styles,
Yeah.
if they made like an Inside Out about all of the different attachment styles. I was trying to like imagine
that would be so cute.
what the characters would be.
Yes.
Like I feel like Secure would be like did you ever watch Lizzie McGuire?
Did I watch
Okay.
Lizzie
Like
McGuire?
Ethan Kraft.
He's
Just like chill, skater
like,
bro. He's
eating
like
spaghetti.
yeah, he's just calm. Didn't care. Not a care in the world, just fine.
Yeah.
So very cool as a cucumber. And then like anxious. I think of Aunt Josephine from Series of Unfortunate Events. I've brought her up a few times.
You have brought her up.
She's
She's really
just-
connected with that
She's just an
character.
anxious soul. She reminds me of someone I'm very close to
Okay.
who might listen to this,
Yeah.
and you know, I hope she gets a kick out of it. But what about like disorganized and avoidant?
Disorganized and avoidant. I honestly just keep thinking of like the little fear one. They could just have a crossover episode where they bring little fear inside out into there, because I would think that it would be
avoidant,
and
then maybe
then disorganized.
Ginny and Georgia.
Oh, from Ginny and Georgia on Netflix.
There's a lot we can
great
say.
show.
Yeah, great show.
Yeah,
lots of trigger warnings for that one, but great show.
Lots of trigger warnings for that one.
But both of them are for sure highly disorganized.
Yeah, they are, with good reason.
Lots of complex trauma.
Yeah.
Whew.
Anyway, that was a nice little side quest.
I know, it's fun.
That was cute.
And so I think that when we think about attachments, I really wanted to focus heavily on like friendships and relationships, because I feel like that's most of the questions that people have. It's never like, how can I better my attachment with myself? It's valid. We will go into that later. But most people are like, why am I dating people that are bad for me? And like, why are my friends all bad? And I think that's really impactful to know, just for that awareness. Okay. When did you finally realize that your attachment style was maybe like seeping into your friendships or relationships?
I think just honestly, the moment that I realized what was happening was I was talking to my dad. My dad and I are very similar in our attachment styles, and he was talking about these things and having these conversations about people in his life, and I was sitting there thinking, okay, this is 100% like you just like being in your head. Like these people, I've talked to these people, I know that they don't feel this way. We're not seeing like evidence behind this. But then I went a little bit introspective. I was like, I'm thinking these same exact things and saying these same things. And I was like, okay, so one, I'm connected to my dad very closely with our attachment styles. And two, I'm realizing that I am showing up to my relationships in the same way that I'm listening to my dad worry about his.
Okay.
And then I was building that connection of, okay, so there's some stuff going on there. And most of it comes through with like texting.
Yeah.
Or, you know, because context, we don't understand context, tone, all of the things. But then also when I would say no to things, and instantly my brain would go to, oh my gosh, they're going to be mad at me because I said no.
Yeah.
So that was me. What about you?
This is always a hoot. I really hope my husband is going to listen to this one. If not, I'll just request that he does. He made me realize that my attachments, I mean, because I knew in like small doses, but actually meeting and getting into like a very stable relationship with him was the first time I was just like, oh, because I always knew that we had a very secure attachment with each other. Yeah. Throughout our dating, throughout our engagement. But it was when we got married. And I think I've mentioned this a few times. I definitely have personally. But the second we got married, I became horribly anxious that he was going to die.
Back to the death thing
of
like Disney Channel started it all for you.
To the point where, and we actually were just talking about this the other day with family, I talk about it on a weekly basis. Like
death?
Sometimes his death specifically.
Oh, his death. Okay.
Sometimes multiple times a week. And so it was the moment where I realized I have a very secure relationship with my spouse. I'm very, very lucky for that. It takes two to tango for sure. And we did it very beautifully. But it was a moment where I realized my relationship was secure, but I didn't feel secure. When I was like, ooh, cognitive dissonance, girlfriend, you're anxious.
Yeah.
And if you're up late thinking your husband's going to die, girl, we got to unpack that. Yeah. So that was my first like, oh, yikes moment. When I really saw attachment rearing its ugly head.
Yeah. And going back to childhood of watching those Disney Channel shows. And then with that, so let's do a little child work.
Yes.
So if you could tell yourself, give your child self a little pep talk about attachment.
Yeah.
What would it be?
Ooh. I'd probably say things aren't always your fault and you will lose people.
Love that.
And I would genuinely want to tell myself like, hey, you're going to lose people both because of death, yes, but also because it's just not right for you.
Yeah.
You do or do not have to take that personally.
Yeah.
And it's okay to like ask yourself that question.
Right.
So I think I would have wanted to hear that because I've always just kind of taken that responsibility myself when sometimes it's not mine to have.
Right. Release of responsibility.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just not my fault.
Yeah.
What about you?
Honestly, the same vein.
Yeah.
Of one, mine would be you don't have to overcompensate to keep people. Like you don't have to go above and beyond to make them your friend.
Yeah.
And that some people are not going to like you, and that is okay. It might have nothing to do with you. More than likely, it has nothing to do with you.
Right.
And that like I don't have to take the responsibility of everyone's feelings all the time.
Yeah. Absolutely. Because
that would be mine.
When it's this idea of like our attachment styles that we've had from a very young age, they create patterns in our friendships, in our relationships. So likely how we were playing on the playground in first grade was similar to how we were texting our friends in high school.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to think about that because I even think about like, okay, on the playground, I just wanted to make sure I had friends to play with and that things were good. I was the same way in high school.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like the cool as a cucumber Ethan Kraft kind of mentality. It was like, I just want to make sure I have friends.
Yeah.
And like, I want to belong.
Yeah. I remember a very vivid memory from elementary school, which is, it's kind of sad to think about, but there were these like bench tables out at the playground and like the cool kids would be like sitting on the bench tables kind of things. And I got invited there one time.
Big deal.
By Bonnie. Well, I haven't talked or seen her in like ages. But I got invited there by Bonnie and we were all just hanging out there. She pushed me off the tables and I like landed and got like the biggest bruise. And my instant thought, what do you think my instant thought was?
You probably did something wrong.
Yes. It was, what did I do wrong?
You're probably like, oh, I took
Are they mad at me? What do I need to apologize? Because I got pushed off of a table.
Bonnie.
And I think back and I'm like that and the fact that my vocab word to read for that day was photography and I said photography. That just plays completely into just my fear of talking in public.
Oh my god.
But yeah, like 100% of someone did something to actively hurt me and my thought was, what did I do wrong and do I need to apologize because I upset that person?
Oh. When I think that like what people might need to kind of remember and realize is that our attachment styles are very much a way of just talking about like love and safety experiences. And so like, okay, a secure attachment style just says that like, ooh, I naturally feel loved and feel safe and I enjoy those moments. And when they're not there, I don't think anything of it. It's very neutral. Yeah. But then again, like the anxious style, it's like, ooh, wait, if someone is with me physically, that's when I feel loved and feel safe. But if I'm alone, I don't have that, and so on and so on. Yeah. And I think that like we need to realize that a lot of times our relationships, whether it's friendships or romantic wise, they trigger those early childhood love and safety experiences. And that can be really overwhelming because also sometimes like we don't fall in love with the person. We fall in love with like the memory or the kind of attachment that it can echo from our past.
Right. Yeah. It's all protective, protective factors. That's why any of these things, I always ask, how does it serve you? Yeah. How did it serve you? In what way was it helpful? Because I'm a strong and firm believer that a lot of our decisions are made out of love and fear.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of fear-based for sure. Well, and it's also one of those where like, again, attachment and IFS works so well together because you think about like the different parts of you of like, ooh, this is a protector part of me. This is a manager part of me. A lot of those all have the same attachment style, but it just is wearing a different hat essentially. Because a secure manager would look different than like a secure protector and like a secure enforcer. So I think it's just really helpful to know that sometimes if we're feeling like we're gravitating towards what we would define as a toxic relationship, asking yourself, does this dynamic mirror an attachment I had early on that may have made me feel safe? I talk to clients a lot about that of like, hey, our comfort zone in attachments doesn't have to be quote unquote healthy to be our comfort zone. It could just be what we're used to.
Right. And the same thing with like somatic therapy of our bodies craving that stress of it's almost feels like it's taming that chaos if we put ourselves in chaotic experiences. I think we talked about in one of our earlier episodes regarding when you're in a secure and safe relationship, you start to question yourself. Is it boring?
Yeah.
Is this not right for me?
Your body's not activated
Yeah.
at
Do
all.
I not care about this person? It's like, no, you just feel a sense of calm. And sometimes that can feel like chaos to feel calm.
Absolutely.
And so we seek that out.
Well, even like with this job and this line of work, I noticed that like even though it's not my story or my stress, my body sometimes just like shows signs of activation based on like how I'm sympathizing or empathizing with a client. All of those things are great things, but I intentionally have to like very much ground in between sessions so that my body isn't wired to thrive while activated. That's when I've really had to try to like grasp, especially this year. That's kind of been like my commitment to myself of like regulate and ground in between people, on the way to work, going home. Because again, like you said, like our bodies will be wired to thrive in chaos or in stress if we make that consistent.
For sure. So moving into the part where we said, okay, we're not parents.
No.
But it is important to bring up parenting and the parenting experience when we are talking about attachment.
Sure.
So parenting through your own attachment style.
Big deal.
What does that mean?
Well, I think it's just this idea of like, again, awareness and just kind of knowing your truth. Because this idea of like, okay, if you know that you're naturally more anxious, if your child is acting up during a day, you might feel like they no longer like you or that you're a bad parent. I think that from what I've heard, everyone goes through that at some way, but it just sinks in a little bit deeper depending on our attachment style.
Totally. So it's that idea of transference, of that fear-based response of, oh my gosh, are they doing this because I'm not doing enough for them? Yeah. And then typically that can lead to like overcompensation or trying to, I don't want to use that word. I was going to use a C word, but it does not work. Not a bad one, I promise. But essentially, instead of allowing for resilience to be built through the experience, we instantly go to save mode. Yeah, absolutely. Of like, I want to save them from this instead of showing them that they can help themselves in that situation kind of thing. I actually noticed this. My friend Christina, she's a nanny, and I was with them at a jump park, and one of the kids could not pull themselves up onto the little whatever thingy it is, and I wanted to instantly go in and like help them up. So I was like, they're struggling. I got to go help, or else they're not going to have fun. And Christina's like, no. Let them struggle and show that like you're there in case they fall, but that they got it. And he kept trying. And so she just put like a little hand under his foot, said, okay, now push off. And he pushed and he was up, and he felt so much like pride in being able to get up there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I could have just taken away that entire moment of him showing himself that like he's strong enough to do this because I wanted to save that kid. Absolutely.
Well, and especially like depending on their developmental period, that can be very activating for our own attachment styles. Yeah. Like my nephew he's a toddler. He's a very egocentric stage of development, which is, first of all, fantastic. He's developing as he should. It's awesome. He's also just a great kid in general. But again, he's very egocentric. He thinks about himself and really only himself all the time. He's building like sympathy and empathy skills, which are very, very sweet. Yeah. And I love it. But largely, we think about ourselves to the point where like in a birthday card that he wrote for me, he wrote that like, well, I got a goodie bag from Isaiah's party at school, which it was like one of those where it didn't touch on an attachment. Right. But depending on like the person or what happens, in a way, like that could trigger like, oh my gosh, does my nephew no longer love me because I didn't give him a goodie bag like his friend did at daycare? And I think that's just a lot to think on and just to be aware of, because again, children aren't going to be regulated and stable in the ways that adults are. Right. We don't want them to be. We want them to be changing and evolving. Yeah. But knowing that they're not quote unquote stable, that will really kind of make our check engine light turn on in terms of our attachment style, which is hard. But that's not to say that our attachment style has to be perfect or beautifully regulated to be a parent. No. It just means that we want to be aware and really take care of ourselves in the process. Yeah. And in reality, it's good to show that
we're not, because then they're not going to think they have to be perfect, which then ties perfectly into kids will 100% mirror our attachment styles. So if we are presenting very anxiously attached to them, they're going to start to bring that back because they're learning. It's modeling, it's mirroring. It's literally the neurotransmitters in our brain. Yeah. Like, they're building that connections is, okay, this is how we interact. And so being mindful of, okay, if I'm showing up in this capacity and showing that I have to be perfect or that I have to constantly be there if anything goes awry, they're going to think that that same thing needs to be done when they grow up, or even as a kid. And that, you know, kids, the term like, well, they grew up fast, or they're so mature for their age. There's some, you know, some strengths in that, but then also it's like, they're a kid.
That's a hard
and
one.
They don't have to take care of us.
No, they don't. That's parentifying a child. You don't want to do that. That was actually a comment that I always got as a kid, was like, she's really mature for her age. She's wise beyond her years. She's an old soul, which, like, yes. Yeah. But also, like, teach the girl how to have fun. Right.
And then she can take, like, a chill pill. Yeah. And relax and not have to worry about helping everyone all the time.
It's not that deep. Yeah. I love that. And again, like, the 30% good enough theory is if you are making those decisions that you feel like, I did a great job, or like, I did a good job, I did an okay job, that felt secure 30% of the time, you're doing a great job. And the thing is, even if you're not, you're still doing a great job. Yeah. I feel like parents are one of those, like, groups of people that I constantly just want to be like, are you okay? And you're amazing.
Have you seen the new commercial? I think it's Gerber. It's a Gerber. Oh my God, bro. It's so good. They're on an airplane and there's a kid that's crying. Sure. You know, like the baby that's crying on an airplane because of the pressure and all the things that it happens. Sure. And everyone's looking around being like, oh my gosh. But then there's another mom there with their kid sitting next to him, and the mom with the baby that's crying turns to the other mom and says, like, I'm so sorry. And the other mom looks at her and says, you're doing a great job. And then hands her a Gerber applesauce pouch. Really sweet. And I've seen it so many times this week, and I'm like, that's the best commercial ever.
Oh my gosh.
To be like, you're doing a good job. Yeah. They need to hear that. We need to hear that.
Right. So, okay, as we're, like, kind of dissecting romantic relationships, friendships, relationships with children as parents, like, we need to remind ourselves that, you know what? Whoever you're talking to might not have your same attachment style. They are going through their own thing in their own head at the same time that you are. Yep. Exercising compassion and kindness where it's most realistic. Because, I mean, that just goes so far. And I just feel like it's not done as much anymore for a whole slew of reasons. But I think when we talk about attachments, again, that compassion towards not only other people but ourselves, it's just really key. Yeah. As hard as it is.
It is difficult. But we're on that journey together. Oh, yeah. And as we're on that journey together, self-talk. Yes. I love self-talk, you guys. Like, I believe that's a make or break situation, is how we talk to ourselves. But when we're exploring, like, how attachment wounds live inside of our heads, I was doing a little bit of research, just preparing for this podcast, you know, per me. And I was thinking about how my own self-talk impacted me. Yeah. And one, the limbic system. Yeah. We love to talk about the body, you guys. But literally, our self-talk can affect our limbic system with the emotions that we feel, with the expression of that, with how deeply we do feel these emotions, with social behaviors, with... there was something that I read where you wake up and the first thing that you say to yourself is how your day's going to go.
Ooh. Wow, that's impactful. Well, it's like the studies that they do of, like, the two plants in two jars, and you talk really kindly to one and you're really rude to the other one, and the one that you're nicer to grows in a more like healthy environment.
It's all about, like, mindset of like where your mindset is for that day is typically how we're going to see is the outcome of our day.
And it's literally a plant too. Yeah.
Framing and reframing. But like our expectations, it shapes our expectations. It shapes, like, our thought patterns. It does. It can impair, like, brain wiring and make us more predisposition towards, like, anxiety, depression,
illness, even too.
Illness, yeah. The stress hormones go whoop all the way to the ceiling. So that was what I got from, like, my research.
I love that. So, okay, if you were to kind of go and have a chat with your inner voice, what did they used to tell you all the time that, like, you now know isn't true?
My inner voice was telling me that everyone is mad at me all the time, and that I have to overwork and show them that they don't need to be mad at me, that I care and I love them all the time.
Sure.
That would be mine.
I'd say probably similar of like, no one actually likes you.
Yeah.
They're just in it for, I don't know, you work hard. I don't know, you have connections, or not even, like, you're just loyal. So I think that was mine for a long time of like, it's not real. Yeah. And like, it's just fleeting. Like, it's not going to last. So it's fine.
Right. And that if you do anything to show them otherwise, then they're leaving too.
Yes. It's like, oh, like, this is your fault.
Yeah.
So that's definitely one of them.
Definitely.
Well, and I feel like this is kind of like a cliche kind of thing, but I actually talk to clients a lot about it, is when their inner voice doesn't feel like theirs, asking, like, does it sound like someone that's not you? Yeah. I feel like just having that check-in with yourself of like, hey, this inner voice that's being a bully, does it have a parent's voice? Does it have a coach's voice, a friend, a partner? Because again, like, that inner voice becomes that inner critic so fast. Yep. Or it's a protective voice from your childhood that doesn't have to be there anymore.
We don't have to keep those thoughts, you guys. We cannot control the first one that comes in, but we can control what we do with it, and if we want to keep it around. And just reminding yourself that, like, your inner voice does not represent reality all the time. It doesn't have to. Yeah. Those inner thoughts and feelings don't have to equate to fact. And it's okay to really ask yourself, like, is this real? Or is this an old protective factor? Is this my attachment kind of rearing its ugly head? Yeah. Because we don't have to only go off of our inner voice. We can still trust our intuition while still questioning our inner voice. Right. So what does earned security look like, and how do we get there? So earned security is essentially this idea that even if as a child, you know, we had an anxious, avoidant, or disorganized attachment style, that in adulthood we work to get more towards, I'm not even going to say fully towards secure, but more towards like secure and having secure attachments with the people around us. Yeah. So that's like earned security. Yeah. So tools. What tools do you have in your toolkit? Well, first of all, we say it all the time, naming it. Name it to tame it. Yes. And I think it's one of those where if like you're aware and acknowledging that this attachment style can exist, talking about it with the people around you. I think that's something that's really impactful. And again, like, this is a universal among everybody. Yeah. No, we won't all have the same attachment styles, but it's helpful to know what the other person is experiencing. It's like a love language. Yeah. Like, I know my partner's top love languages, but I also know his attachment style too. And I think starting with connecting with vulnerability and openness with others is a huge tool. Yeah. And also doing some guilt and shame work with yourself if that comes up. Yeah. And if it happens, check out Brene Brown. Yeah. She's awesome. She's the best. Definitely. I definitely think knowledge is the power to this, like naming it to tame it. Just even listening to this podcast or taking the test and being able to identify what's going on is so helpful, because one, it makes you feel like you're not just like making things up in your head. Yeah. And instead it's like, no, this is very valid and a lot of people actually feel this. And so we don't need to judge ourselves for it. Yeah. But also challenging those negative thoughts. Yes. Setting those boundaries, identifying our triggers, practicing mindfulness, sitting with the things of like sitting with a feeling and just letting it be present without being like, okay, this is bad, or I shouldn't be feeling this, or I need to be doing better. And instead just like accepting it. Radical acceptance. Well, and I feel like with so many of the topics that we've talked about in the past, they require external boundary setting, but I feel like attachments is one of those where your internal boundary setting needs to be really amped up a bit. Yeah. Just so you can remind yourself of, hey, is it helpful for me to have my red receipts on? Yeah. Or is it really touching on that anxious attachment? Or if my friend isn't texting me back, like, what does that mean? Like, it's setting those different boundaries with yourself of saying, hey, I'm going to give myself 10 seconds to be anxious about this. But then I'm going to remind myself that doesn't equal fact. So you're acknowledging the anxiety, but also moving past it and moving forward. So again, those internal boundaries are really big. Yeah. And like, earned security, it is not about erasing what has happened or even ignoring what has happened, because we can't do that. That's not realistic. Like, that is fact that these things occurred, but instead it's moving forward with a different mindset and with more information about what's going on and not holding yourself up to this responsibility that you don't need to hold yourself to. Well, and it's true compassion and self-compassion. Like in the commercial, the parent who like offered something to another parent, or I know like in my own marriage, my husband doesn't say anything judgmental when I bring up his death. Which sounds interesting as I say it out loud, but it's this idea of like, hey, like he doesn't elicit judgment. He elicits concern of like,
hey honey, you're talking about my death a lot this week.
Yeah.
Are you okay? Or he'll literally be like, are you feeling anxious this week? And again, that is such beautiful compassion. And again, I'm not married to a therapist. I'm married to a human being. He's the best. I 100%. But it's just giving somebody a chance to speak openly without judgment, and trying to reflect that in ourselves too.
Yeah.
As hard as that is.
Right. So wrapping up, once again, reiterating.
Yep.
If you are listening and you're like, okay, I'm not a secure attachment style. I think I'm anxious, or I think I'm avoidant, or I'm disorganized. That's okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Like, you are naming it and you are calling it or bringing it to the table. Isn't that what you say? Like, inviting it to the table instead of calling it out, because it's not a negative thing. There's no judgment to it. Instead, you're just bringing that information in. And that is okay. That does not mean that you have unhealthy relationships.
Correct.
It just means that there might be stuff going on inside of us that we haven't been, like, allowing to sit and feel with.
So, okay. What is one thing, this is IFSC, what is one thing your inner child would be very proud of about you right now?
I think that she would be really proud that the relationships that did not feel well, that I left those and instead found a relationship that I can feel 100% authentically me in and safe in.
I love that.
Because I just looking back on her, she'd be like, but no, like, you don't need to leave those,
Stick
because
it out.
Yeah, you got to keep trying. You got to work on them. Like, you're going to hurt their feelings. And what if you're wrong? And no, I had to put myself first and be like, sometimes leaving is the best thing that you can do.
Oh, for sure.
So,
absolutely.
my little inner child, Caroline, would be like,
that.
I am so proud of you for leaving the relationships that did not feel safe and sacred and finding one that definitely does.
I love that.
What about you?
Mine's pretty similar. I think mine would probably be more, first of all, in like a romantic setting, I'd be like, go girl, happy marriage, so proud of you. But I think that, like, more so my inner child would be proud of me in terms of like how I've changed my friendships and my relationships, because of a way that I've like defined it within myself and with a lot of my clients is like basically a tree, and your friendships can either be roots, a trunk, or leaves. Again, the roots, those are like ride or die friends. They are going to be there literally forever. Whether they like it or not, they're just going to be there. And you can always depend on them. It's just someone that you can just pick back up with.
Right.
But then there's like the trunk kind of friends is, hey, like you can rely on them. They're a great friend. They're a strong friendship, but you might not want to put all of the pressure on them. Right. Because they might fracture and they might break. Then there's your leaf friendships where it's like, they're great. They're there for a reason, but you won't want to give them like the quote unquote heavy lifting of a friendship of like the deeper levels of things. They're great to have around and you like them and they do like add value to your life. But it's okay if it's just a leaf. So I think what my inner child would be proud of is giving myself permission to have friends in those different categories, to not have friends in those different categories. And like you said, like just saying goodbye and outgrowing them. And reminding myself that like the leaf friends and the root friends are all very valued and everything in between. And they might even change. A leaf might become a root and vice versa. But that's all right. And it's not my fault.
Right.
Not all the time.
I love that.
Maybe sometimes. But not all the time.
I love that. And with the leaves, that they could be seasonal.
Yeah.
Seasonal leaves.
That they are. And maybe they turn fun colors.
Yeah. It's so fun. Okay, so if you are listening, some just like things to reflect on, some questions to maybe, voice journal and or write journal. You can draw it out, whatever it looks like. But like when you are feeling anxious in a relationship, what are you afraid will happen?
What's like your worst case scenario brain going to tell you?
Like what is your body saying like, this is what's going to happen. I need to do this. And then like what roles do you tend to take on in a relationship and why?
And if it's like if it's a caregiver role, like, hey, do you have to have this role? Like, like you said, like identifying the role and saying like, am I okay with this?
Yeah. And then maybe like what parts of yourself do you hide or downplay in relationships?
Sure. Take up space.
Yeah.
And if
you're
not,
important.
Like, why is there resistance or what's the resistance telling you?
Right.
Like checking in with yourself. Oh, I feel like I could talk about attachments for a long time.
I do. I love attachment theory so much. So great. I need to buy a book on it.
It's a good one. You don't have to do another training, I promise.
I know. I currently have a training like in my cart that I need to do. Need to. would like to.
You could.
Yeah.
So just remember that like your attachments make you who you are, but they don't define who you are. Yeah. They just inform kind of how you move through the world. The world. Ugh, it's early and the caffeine hasn't caffeined yet. But it can help like kind of boost you to rewrite your narrative, and it is changeable if you want it to be. So if you're kind of coming away from this thinking like, ooh, my attachment style isn't what I want, we can use that as motivation and not as like a self-deprecating factor.
Yeah. Don't judge yourself.
No, you're doing great.
You're doing great. And if you want to do some more work with attachment, we're here for you.
Let us know.
Check us out on www.soulhavengeorgia.com.
Yes.
Georgia is completely the word, not the GA.
We tried to buy soulhavencounseling.com, but the domain wasn't available.
It was taken. Boo, you guys. But also, I'm going to attach a link to the assessment if you would like to take it there and just kind of do a little bit of like introspection work of where you are.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of fun. I don't know if maybe that's
like
a nerd moment. It's like, ooh, I like to learn these things about myself.
Absolutely.
And also follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. We're on YouTube, Spotify,
Apple,
iTunes. Yeah. I'm an iTunes girly, so I always have to call that one out. I know a lot of people judge me for that, but that's okay. And like, comment, subscribe, all the things. We want to make
interact with us.
Yeah, this interaction more this information more accessible.
Absolutely.
And also we want to hear from y'all. So comment, please.
And just a reminder that this is not a substitute for therapy. We would love to work with you for therapy if you want to work with us. But just know that listening to this is not a substitute for therapy at all. And if you are in crisis or if you really need support immediately, we are not a crisis facility. So please dial 988-911 or visit your nearest emergency room.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next time.
Until then, bye.